Hi everybody, my name is Micah and I'm creating this video on alignment to help any voice students or any music student in particular to help them with their alignment of their body, to help them breathe better, feel more relaxed, less tense, things like that. Those things have incredible benefits when you're making music. They allow your music to be more free and they allow your voice to gain range. So when we're talking about alignment, we need to define the word kinesthesia. Kinesthesia is kind of like our sixth sense. It helps us feel our movement when the rest of our senses don't necessarily apply in that sense. So in order to figure out what kinesthesia is, I'm gonna do an exercise with you that actually comes out of this book. It's called What Every Singer Needs to Know About the Body. It's by Melissa Mald, Mary Jean Allen, and Kurt Alexander Zeller. I found it to be really helpful and really informational. I'd highly suggest checking it out. But this exercise comes from there, and it goes like this. What you're gonna do is you're gonna take your hand, whether it be right or left, it doesn't matter. You're gonna put it above your head. And I have to close my eyes because I can see myself in the video. But you don't necessarily have to close your eyes. But what you're gonna do is you're going to move your fingers around like this. And as you move them, feel your hand in the space above your head. How far away is your hand from your head? How far away are your fingers from each other? Things like that. And begin to get a sense of where your hand is in the space above you. As you do, you'll get a feeling. And that feeling is the feeling of kinesthesia of your hand in relation to the rest of your body. And now, as you continue to move your fingers, slowly move your hand in front of your eyes. And as you do that, and look at your fingers while you're still moving them, your kinesthesia is going to go away because your sense of sight takes over. Your body no longer needs kinesthesia to sense where your hand is in the space. And because we can't necessarily see all of the parts of the body we're going to talk about, kinesthesia is imperative to understand and be able to use in these exercises. So as we jump into alignment, we're going to talk about the 6 points of balance in a body. They go in the order that we are going to balance them is the atlanto-occipital joint, then the thorax, then your hip joint, your knee joint, your ankle joint, and finally your arm structure. So we're now going to discover what balancing all 6 of those looks like. We're going to begin at the top of our body and move our way down. We're going to skip the arm structure because we have to balance the rest of our body before we can balance our arm structure. So at the top of our body is the atlanto-occipital joint, sometimes known as the AO joint. This joint, it's the joint that connects our spine to our head. Now, if you close your eyes for a second, point to where you think your atlanto-occipital joint is. All right, go ahead and open your eyes. If you are not pointing to your ears, then you would be incorrect. Your atlanto-occipital joint actually goes all the way up through your back and forward to about right between your ears. So your head, it rests on the vertebra that is right between your ears. This vertebra is known as the atlas. The name comes from a mythological figure who holds up the weight of the world. And so this vertebra is holding up the weight of your head. So in order to explore the atlanto-occipital joint, we're going to be moving our head a little bit. If you're still not quite sure where your atlas is at, what you could do is just shake your head no, and where you feel your body rotating on the axis is exactly where your atlas is at. So when we're balancing our head, our atlanto-occipital joint has to balance on 3 different axes. The first one is the one we just discovered. When you shake your head no, the axis where your eyes stay on the same plane. The second axis is the up and down axis. The axis is if you were to shake your head yes. And the third axis is the axis forward and backwards. So when we're balancing the first axis, the one where you shake your head no, what you're gonna do is find a line on the floor. See, floor tiles work great for this. You're looking for a straight line, and you're just gonna put it in between your feet, look straight down, and then just look straight up. Now your head should be correct on this plane. So it's not over here, it's not over here, it's right in the middle. And now in order to find how far up and down we need to go, we're gonna do a different exercise. This exercise also comes from the book, What Every Singer Needs to Know About the Body, just so that you know. When we're talking about this plane, it's important to get a correct map of where exactly your skull is. So some people think that the jaw is actually a part of your skull, but in fact, it's a ligament that attaches to your jaw. So when we're balancing our skull up and down, we need to make sure that we are not mapping our jaw into the balance of our head. First, let's explore what it looks like to balance it incorrectly. What you're gonna do here is take your left thumb, put it on the bottom part of your jaw, or your chin, and then put your right arm in the back top of your head. Now, without using your neck muscles, support the weight of your head with your hands and move your head up and down, up and down. You can move it kind of quickly, but you don't want to hurt yourself. You're gonna feel a little bit of restriction in your neck. It's just not gonna feel natural, and that's okay. That's exactly what we want. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna remove the mapping of our jaw from our skull. And so what you're gonna do is put your finger on your teeth just like this and do that same exercise using the top or the bottom of the top teeth, just like this. Now your head should swing freely up and down, just like it did. And so once you've explored how that works, you can find the balance of your skull on that plane. So now we've discovered the balance on this plane and this plane. If you're still struggling on this plane, sometimes it helps to imagine the bottom of the top of your teeth should be parallel to the floor. And in some cases, finding the balance of this plane can feel kind of snooty, almost like your head is up further than it normally is. And that's okay. That's exactly where it needs to be. And finally, we're going to explore this third axis. How do we balance our head on this axis? So what we're going to do is just pull your head way forward, like you're really interested in something. You're looking really intently at it. So look at it, and then pull your head way back, like you're in disgust of something. Pretend you don't like it. And then pull it way forward again, and way back, way forward, way back. And you're gonna do that slowly and make your movements even more minuscule and more quickly until you finally find the balance. So now that your head is balanced on all three planes, you should feel no neck tension. No neck tension at all. And this is exactly how you can balance your head on the atlanto-occipital joint on the axis, which is the top vertebrae of your spine. Once you've mastered balancing your head on that axis, we can move on to the thorax. So the thorax, where is it? What is it? When I first heard it, I thought of the little orange guy from Disney, but he's the lorax. So we're talking about the thorax, not the lorax. So when you're thinking about the thorax, you need to imagine it between the base of your neck all the way to your lowest rib. So it's about here to, let me adjust the camera here, to my lowest rib, which is right there. So anything in between there is my thorax. So as we're trying to balance our thorax, we need to correctly map all of where our thorax is. So go ahead and just take a little bit to feel your thorax, feel your sternum, all of your ribs, and especially go all the way to your back and feel all of your spinal vertebra. because this is what is going to hold the weight of your thorax. So in order to balance our thorax, we need to understand the basic curvature of our spine. So when we're looking at our spine, sometimes you'll hear people say, straighten your spine, stand up straight, do that type of thing. But in fact, when we're balancing and finding our alignment, it's better to honor the natural curve of our spine. So if you look on page 31 of the book I've been talking about, you see this diagram. This diagram clearly shows that the spine is not straight. In fact, it curves quite frequently. This curve right here is called the thoracic curve. It curves towards your back. So these little spikes on the end here are exactly what you feel when you touch your spine. So your spine is going to curve out in your thorax to make room for your lungs, your heart, your diaphragm, things like that. And so we have to find this natural curve of our spine. Now the best way to do that is to lay down on the ground. So I'm going to go ahead and do that real quickly. So as you're laying on the ground, you're going to feel your thorax, and you can kind of feel your spine coming off of the ground a little bit in your stomach area, in your waist area, but your thorax should be touching the ground, and you're going to feel that curve kind of right here. And so you want to use your kinesthesia to sense the floor and where it connects to your spine. When you're laying on the ground supports the full weight of your body, and so your spine automatically goes to its natural curve. So once you kind of get the idea of how your spine curves in relation to your back and the rest of your body, you can stand up and try to honor that same curve. So now I'm going to go ahead and stand back up. And as I stand, I'm going to try and realign my spine just the way it was as I was laying down. Okay, there it is. So as you might have to do this a couple times to get it right. It takes a little bit of practice with your kinesthesia in sensing the natural curvature of your spine. Once you've achieved that natural curvature, the trick to balancing your thorax is imagining the weight of your thorax traveling down your spine into what we call the lumbar spinal area, which is the lower spinal vertebra that can absorb the weight of the upper body. So what we're going to do is feel the base of your neck, your vertebra there, and imagine the weight of your thorax sitting on that vertebra. You might find that your head tilts forward and your neck tenses a little bit, but as you feel the weight of your thorax resting on that vertebra, feel it shift to the vertebra below it, and then the vertebra below it, and keep going down your spine, vertebra by vertebra, until you feel your thorax relax into a position of balance on your lower spine. This is what a balanced thorax feels like. Once you've achieved the balance of your thorax, you can begin to move downwards on your body onto the hip joint. When we're talking about our hip joint, first things first, we need to find out where it's at. So when we look at our hips, we need to find, so there's normally a big bone about right here. Sometimes people will point to this when they say put their hands on their hips. They'll put your hands right there on that bone. That bone is not your hips. That is called your lilac crest. Your iliac crest, your iliac crest. And your iliac crest is actually far above your waist. So what we're going to do is we're going to move down onto our thighs, our mid-thighs. Sometimes jean seams help. You're going to pull your arms up those sides until you find what's called your greater trochanter. This is kind of the spiny part of your body. Where is it at? There it is. Okay, so it's a little bit lower. It's a little bit lower than your iliac crest. So you want to find your iliac crest and then your greater trochanter. Your greater trochanter is going to be at about the pocket level if you have jeans on. So you find those two bones, and then right in between those two is your hip joint. So your hip joint is right there. You got your iliac crests, your greater trochanter, so your hip joint is right in between them, right there. So when we are trying to balance our hip joint, you need to imagine your hip joint delivering the weight through your legs. So we just talked about how the thorax delivers the weight to the lumbar spine area, which is the lower back. And as you find your hip joint, you can begin to feel the weight transferring into your legs. One important note here is that if you were sitting, let me grab a chair. If you are sitting, your hip joint actually transfers your weight into your sitting bones, which are completely different. So sometimes it helps to find your hip joint when you stand and sit a couple times. Feel the weight shift from your legs to your sitting bones, and you can use this to help find where your hip joint bends. This will help you balance your hip joint. Another note to talk about when you're talking about your hip joint is that many people will take a bow before or after their performance, and they'll bow using their waist. In fact, your waist was not designed to curve like many people do when they bow. And so when you're bowing, try to keep your entire torso, which is your thorax and your waist, straight when you bow. So if you were to look at it from the side view, it would look something like this. So you've got my waist, my hip joint, my thorax, and then my torso goes from here to here. So I'm going to keep here to here straight as I bow. And I'm bowing at my hip joint and not, if I would bow at my waist, it would look like that. So my whole back is curved now. I don't want that. So practicing all of those different things will help you balance the weight of your atlanto-occipital joint, your thorax, and finally your hip joint through your legs. And as the weight gets to your legs, we need to talk about how to balance your knee joints. Your knee joints are balanced in a couple of ways. So first we've got locked, bent, and balanced. So the trick is a lot of people say, no, we don't want to lock them. So we're not going to lock our knees, we're going to bend them. But the fact is when you bend them, you're delivering all that weight to your knee joint and they're not balanced. And so there can be a lot of tension there as well. So when you're trying to balance your knee joints, what you can do is lock them, then bend them, then lock them, then bend them, lock them, bend them, lock them, bend them, lock them, bend them. Go back and forth, making your movements smaller and smaller until you finally rest at a balance. You might find that as you do this, you find that you will balance at the place that makes you feel the tallest. If you're having trouble finding a natural distance for your feet, sometimes what'll help is if you put your feet really close together and then you jump, your feet will naturally land in a position that is waist and shoulder width apart. So once you've balanced your knee joints, your weight has transferred all the way through those into your ankles. So now we're going to talk about our feet. When you imagine your feet, if you were to imagine your feet, what would they look like? A lot of people will either draw a picture of an L or something of that nature. And in fact, that is not correct. When you're imagining your feet, you need to imagine almost a curve at the bottom because your heel does not connect directly to your ankle joint. Your heel is actually behind it. And therefore, when you're balancing on your feet, you have to imagine your heel as the back part, and then the right and left sides of each of your feet, the balls of your feet, as 3 balance points. So when we're standing on our feet, we're going to imagine the heels of our feet and the right and left sides of the balls of our feet as a tripod for our body. So we've basically got 2 music stands as legs. Imagine they protrude out and they support your body. So when you're trying to find the balance between these, you're going to do an exercise that consists of rolling forward on the balls of your feet and rolling back on the heels of your feet, and then rolling back and forth, and back, forth, and back, and forth, until you can find nice balance between your heels and the balls of your feet. And then as you do this exercise more and more, it'll become easier and easier. You may notice that a lot of these exercises include both extremes and then finding the balance between them. And that's exactly what this balancing is. You're finding what extremes you tend to do, doing the counter extreme, and then returning to a balance. Balance is tricky because you can't force yourself to balance. You can't say, I'm going to balance. No, that doesn't work. It creates so much tension. What's important is to carefully balance each part of your body, and then as you move, your body's going to experience what is called biotensegrity. This is a term that refers to the almost gelatinous yet supported structure of your body. As you move, your entire body is affected and rebalances itself. So if you can find your initial balance, then your movements will become so much freer, and your body, through biotensegrity, the constant support through bones and muscles and ligaments and joints, will automatically rebalance itself. So now that we've balanced our entire body, top to bottom, we can now talk about our arms. We save our arms for last because if our arms are balanced and attached to a thorax and body that is not balanced, the moment we move, our arms become unbalanced. So we balanced our body, now we're going to focus on our arms. When we're talking about our arms, it's important to note where they connect to our body. Obviously, our shoulders are joints that connect, but the muscles themselves reach all the way in and connect to our sternum. So when you're trying to relax and balance the muscles in your arms to the rest of your skeleton, it's important to note that they attach to your sternum, not your shoulders. So in order to balance your shoulders or your arms in their entirety, you need to do the exact same thing we've been doing. Play with the different extremes. So first we're going to move our shoulders as high up as we can, close to your ears. So do that and hold it for a little bit. You can feel the tension in your shoulders and in your neck and all over the place. So we are going to release, slowly return back to normal, a place of no work, and then you're going to feel like you're wearing shoulder pads or carrying a heavy weight, and put your shoulders and arms as far down as you possibly can. You can feel the tension in your shoulders and in your back, especially your upper back. And so you're going to release that tension and relax back into normal. And then we can move our shoulders forward and back. So you're going to do this same exercise just like the rest of your body parts. You're going to switch between them until you can find a nice balance. Once you do this, your arms should be balanced along with the rest of your body. And sometimes it's worth it to revisit all of the parts of your body and rebalance yourself according to this new information and this new body mapping that you've learned about. As you continue to balance your body, it's going to be tricky, and there'll be times when you get out of balance and you have to rebalance yourself. And that's okay. Give yourself time. You're not going to be a master of balance right away. The trick with achieving balance is you're not trying to fight gravity here. You're trying to embrace it and allow your natural skeleton to hold the weight of your body and release the muscle tension that you have, holding up particular areas of your body that can remain unhealthy. So as you're thinking about balance, you can practice this all over the place. It's nice because it's a silent and discreet practice. I mean, you can just barely move your head and learn to balance your AO joint. So as you're practicing this, you can practice it in the classroom while you're sitting down, things like that. So yeah, take this information as you see fit. I hope that you will continue to practice it, and no matter what, keep singing. Thanks for watching.